Hey everyone, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard the Lighthouse Within with Ambar Paloma, but you can also call me Amber. I am so excited about today's topic because it's one that's been on my heart since I started this podcast. And honestly, if you're a human with a beating heart and breath in your lungs, I know you've struggled with this one too, probably more than once. Now, I know I said we would be talking about negative self talk, but today I actually want to talk about forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but also forgiving yourself. And with the year coming to a close, I have a feeling there's someone out there you need to forgive. Maybe that person is you. I hope this episode speaks to you, and if it does, please leave me a comment, send me a DM, or leave me a rating. I love hearing from you guys, so please don't hesitate to leave me some love. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive in. If this is your first time at the Lighthouse Within, I'm so happy you decided to join me. We are on the ultimate voyage to resilience, aka, we're learning how to navigate changes in life so we can live a life we love. And friends, there are officially more than 100 of you. I can't believe it. Not only that, but your support helped me get onto Good Pod's self improvement monthly chart and weekly chart, as well as their education chart. And I even made it as high as the number 11 spot on the self improvement weekly chart. Recently, I shared this amazing news, and someone asked me what's been the best part of this journey so far. And I shared that I genuinely have the best time recording these episodes. But nothing compares to when I hear from you. I love hearing your individual stories of how my words changed your mindset on something. Some of you have shared that you got so excited about what you heard on my podcast that you shared the podcast with boyfriends, friends, coworkers, and mentors. And I thought that was so beautiful because I like to think that we're all on this journey together. Not just that my words are helping you build your lighthouse within for your own benefit, but that you are also becoming a carrier of this knowledge. And when someone turns to you for advice, you can use it to spark the light in others. My podcast has officially been streamed in 23 different countries, and I like to think that together, we are building a system of lighthouses all across the world, shining our light into the storm and calling the lost ships back to safety. So, as you know, we have been on an epic side quest to break up with pursuing happiness and instead cultivating a joyful mindset. And I want to talk about something that really keeps us from creating that. And it's holding on to anger, resentment, and bitterness. You may also know this as struggling to forgive someone. Now, I know, this is not a trending conversation in 2024, okay? Because as someone who spends any amount of time on the internet, I know a lot of you may enjoy holding a grudge. Some of you may enjoy fighting fire with fire, or as the folks on the app formerly called Twitter might say, I'ma just match some energy. Oh, they want to play with me like that? Well, you know what? I'ma start matching energy. But that's not going to be us, friends. We do things differently around here. So let me tell you what inspired this episode. Why do I want to talk to you about forgiveness? Around April of this year, I finally finished forgiving the person who cheated on me 7 years ago. I still remember confronting him that day that I found out about what he did. I had just left the cafe where the woman told me what happened, and I walked into our one-bedroom apartment that we shared, and I held up my phone screen as I showed him the message she sent me. And I said, I thought you loved me. You see, when it first happened, I tried to make sense of the fact that someone who claimed to love me could hurt me. And the first thought I went to was that it was because I was not enough. But I knew that wasn't true. And the second conclusion I came up with hurt me even more. And it was that his decision had nothing to do with me. And there's a special kind of hurt with asking yourself, why didn't they love me enough to be better for me? Why didn't they love me enough not to hurt me? And you're left to reconcile with the fact that it really wasn't about you. Now, I haven't been walking around holding an active grudge against this man, but anytime his name would come up, I had so many conflicting feelings. Like, I wanted to be the bigger person, but I would feel disappointment, discomfort, annoyance. I wondered why I still cared about him. Some part of me, honestly, wished him well. I would start telling myself these stories about how he betrayed me, how he was a bad person, and beneath all those stories that I would tell myself was a bigger fear that I'd never find anyone, and that I would be hurt again if I didn't keep my guard up. This year in April, I was reading through my Bible, not thinking about this person at all. And the story that I was reading had a takeaway about forgiveness. And have you ever had a realization and you feel flushed from head to toe? Like, I mean, from head to toe, like the blood just ran out of your body, leaving you cold, flushed. I had a major aha moment, and I couldn't help but think of him. I started seeing that whole situation differently, and it felt like chains had broken inside of my heart, like I had been freed from something. And y'all will not believe what I am about to say because I didn't believe it either. I suddenly had compassion for him. Yes, y'all, I had compassion for the man who had made me weary of other men for years. But suddenly, I didn't see him as an evil man. I just saw him as an imperfect human. But this is less about my compassion towards him and more about me. Because on that day, in forgiving him, I freed myself from all those victim stories I had told myself. That men aren't untrustworthy. That maybe I'm not meant to be happy. That I couldn't survive this. And the most painful one, that I was so naive. How could I let this happen to me? It turns out forgiveness is more about you than them. Because on that day, I forgave myself for all the self-blame I had thrown my way. In the book The Body Keeps the Score, author Bessel van der Kolk said that one of the hardest things for people is to confront their shame about the way they behave during difficult or traumatizing situations. Now, I know there are some proud grudge holders out there because I used to be one. Okay, I am a reformed grudge holder now, but this is a safe space, okay? No shame. But seriously, I know how hard it can be to let go. And that's why I wanted to share this with you today. Let's talk about how it is not the solution we think it is to keep a grudge. And I think deep down you know that. Research has shown that holding onto grudges takes a toll on our physical and emotional well-being, raising our heart rate, our blood pressure, and our stress levels. Psychologists describe two common responses to unforgiveness. The first is rehearsing the hurt, where we replay painful memories over and over like a movie stuck on repeat in our minds. The second is holding a grudge. This keeps us locked in the victim role, perpetuating negative emotions like anger and blame, which can feel like control, but actually just keeps us stuck in the past. Over time, holding on to these responses can lead to effects like heightened reactions to new conflicts, low self-esteem, sadness, anxiety in relationships, and even a cycle of hopelessness. Forgiveness, however, is how we break free from these patterns and reclaim our peace. And I don't know about you, but reclaiming my peace definitely sounds a lot better than the other symptoms. Now, as a reformed grudge holder, I know there are some less sexy parts of forgiveness that makes us apprehensive about choosing it. I think there are a lot of societal misunderstandings, and sometimes people can weaponize forgiveness against us, saying things like, I thought you forgave me. Why do you keep bringing this up? Or, if you forgave me, why don't you want to talk to me anymore? So let's clarify some things because we are in the business of setting hurtful societal understandings straight. Here are two definitions for my fellow word nerds. In a Psychology Today article, forgiveness is simply defined as the release of resentment or anger. And in the book of Forgiving What You Can't Forget, the author says that forgiveness is both a decision and a process. First, you make the decision to forgive the facts of what happened to you. In other words, you choose to start releasing resentment and anger over what happened. But then, you must also walk through the process of releasing the resentment so that the impact of that event lessens over time. I think a lot of the time, the thing that drives us into this situation comes with grief. And it's important to acknowledge the 5 stages of grief that we might experience: the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression. So when we are choosing to tie ourselves to anger, to bitterness, and resentment, we are choosing to stop the grief process so that we never truly make it to the last stage, which is acceptance. In other words, your grudge is unresolved grief. And I understand that sometimes we think in making this choice to hold a grudge that we are hurting them, that we are keeping them from having access to us. We feel this gives us some kind of control after they've hurt us. It also doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair that they hurt you and you are left to pick up the pieces. It doesn't feel fair that they hurt you and get away with it. It doesn't feel fair that they get to be the villain and you have to be the bigger person. It doesn't feel fair that society asks you to forgive and forget, because if you forget, does that mean that the horrible thing they've done just goes away? I understand. And sometimes our identity is so tied to the wounds they've inflicted, we don't even know who we are without the pain they've caused. And let's be real, some things feel really hard to forgive. But I really love this quote that I read in the Book of Joy about forgiveness, and I really wanted to share it with you. Forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and to be free from the past. Without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We are bound to the chains of bitterness, tied together, trapped. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us, that person will hold the keys to our happiness. When we forgive, we take back control of our own fate and our feelings. We become our own liberator. I love the idea of being our own liberators. And that's what forgiveness is. It's liberation, a path to healing. It's breaking free from victim stories. It's choosing to untie yourself from anger and resentment and making room for joy. It's choosing to move forward. So let's set the record straight. Because there are a lot of things that forgiveness is, but there are a lot of things that forgiveness is not. And if you choose to go through the process of forgiving someone, I want you to have these boundaries in mind, my friend. First of all, forgiveness is not about condoning the behavior. Some people have done horrible things and might have hurt you deeply in ways that can't be justified or excused. That's why I really want you to reframe forgiveness as finishing the grief process around the situation so that you can release the hold the event has on your life. Second, forgiveness is not about reconciliation. Depending on what that person did, you might choose to reconcile. However, if what the person did revealed to you that they are not someone of good character and could hurt you again, it would be foolish to put yourself in harm's way. And the wise thing to do would be to put boundaries in place, such as limiting their access to you. That is why forgiveness is not about reconciliation. It is about inner healing, reducing their impact on your life, and taking back your power over your joy. For example, there is someone I can think of right now that I am like, listen, I forgive you. I even wish you well, but I also hope I never hear about you. And lastly, forgiveness is not about forgetting. I know, I know. There is a famous societal phrase out there somewhere that says to just forgive and forget. Which is why people will come around like, I thought you forgave me. We're family. I thought you forgave me. But my friends, I am here to free you from this misguided piece of advice. There are some things that are difficult to forget completely, like abuse. And it would be absurd to tell someone who has gone through something like that to just forget about it. That's why I love that the author tells us that forgiveness is a process. And processes take time. I mean, it took me 7 years and a whole come to Jesus moment to forgive this man. So it's not so much about forgetting as it is about freeing yourself from the constant painful memories that are keeping you trapped in the past. Now, I want to talk about something really linked to forgiveness. I want to talk about closure. We often hear that closure is something you give yourself, but what does that really mean? I remember in the aftermath of finding out that he cheated on me that I kept asking why. And you might be surprised to find out that no answer he ever gave me was good enough. Here's what I've come to realize. There comes a point when the conversations have all been had, the stones have all been turned and examined from every angle. You've replayed the memories, analyzed the why, what, how, and what ifs. You've talked about it with friends, journaled about it, cried about it, even screamed about it. And yet, despite all of that, the pain remains. This is the hard truth. Closure really isn't something anybody else can give you, because they can't say anything to undo what happened. We look to them for answers, but even if we got them, we would still be left with pain to process. Closure, real closure, comes when we stop waiting for them to make it right. It's a decision, a commitment to ourselves. It's saying, this happened to me. I did not like it. It was painful. I wish it had not happened, but it happened. And I am choosing to move forward anyway. It doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight, but it does mean you stop giving the past permission to control your present and your future. So, how can we move forward from situations where we're struggling to forgive? I want you to arm yourself, but not with weapons and grudges. I want you to arm yourself with forgiveness. Clearly, I am preparing myself for mom jokes for when I do find my person and have kids. ARM is something I came up with to help you move through these moments, and it stands for acknowledge the pain, release the emotional weight, and move forward. So, step one, acknowledge the pain. At this step, I want you to reflect on the ways that this hurt has impacted you and your life. Validate your experiences, validate your emotions, lean on your support system. But be very careful about the stories you tell yourself at this stage, about what it means about you and what it means about them. Try not to victimize yourself, please. I've realized that sometimes we are just imperfect humans and we may all hurt someone on our path to growing up. If you want support with reflecting on what happened, use the 4 R's of reflection from the intuition episode, which you can also find for free in the emotional first aid kit that is linked in the show notes. Step 2 is to release the emotional weight. At this point, I want you to ask yourself this: how does carrying this hurt serve me? And how does it hold me back? I also want you to consider if you can find any compassion for this person. Can you acknowledge their humanity as another imperfect human? Now, in some situations, it might feel extremely difficult for finding someone's humanity, but in the moments that you can, this might help you come to terms with what happened. Maybe seeing the way that they are more committed to their own wounds and chaos than healing can help you decide that you don't want to end up like that too. In the emotional first aid kit that is linked for free in the show notes, you can also find ways to release and restore emotional balance and move through this stage. And finally, the last stage, M, move forward. At this stage, I want you to consider any boundaries you might need to set with this person. Redefine your boundaries, the lessons you've learned, and your peace as you embrace healing. For this stage, I want you to ask yourself, what would my life feel like if I let go of this pain? Maybe that looks like deciding this person can't be in your life anymore. Or maybe that looks like looking forward to making new friends that wouldn't play you like that. Write yourself a closure letter, also known as a goodbye letter, saying goodbye to the situation, maybe even to this person, if you decide that reconciliation is not an option. In the letter, let them know how they've hurt you, how it's impacted you, and then say goodbye and close the chapter. I also want to acknowledge that sometimes we go through a painful, life-changing situation that can feel traumatic. And if that describes you and you are listening to this episode thinking, I can't imagine moving on. I don't know how I'll ever overcome something like this. I really encourage you to reach out to a therapist, a grief coach, or a trauma coach. You don't have to face this alone, and you deserve to live a life full of joy. You know, I love to leave you with a final message, so if you are ready, please close your eyes and place your hand over your heart and take a deep breath with me. Hold it as you let the air fill your lungs and bring you into this moment. Release and feel your feet grounded beneath you and the lightness waiting to meet you. Now, with your hand still over your heart, please receive this message. When you're faced with pain or disappointment, you might feel tempted to villainize the person who hurt you. And you decide if they're the villain, then I must be the victim. But victim is only one antonym for villain. There are other roles you can choose to play in this story too. You can also choose to be the hero, the defender, the protector, the one who persevered. Because that's what it takes to look pain in the face, stand back up and say, you don't define me, I do. And not everyone will choose to be brave or courageous enough to decide their own role in this story. But I want you to know that you can be. You can open your eyes now. If you liked this episode, please leave me a comment or send me a DM on Instagram. I love hearing from you guys. And remember to subscribe and follow the show so that you always know when new episodes drop. This will be the last episode of the year. I am taking a break to travel around for the holidays with my mom and start planning the next series. And I am so excited for some of the topics we will be talking about, like overthinking, self-doubt, and more. If you want to keep up with me in the meantime, please follow me on Instagram or Threads. I'll link it in the show notes. And with that said, I'm wishing you all a very happy holidays and a happy new year. Bye.